Welcome to the TCS WMN Podcast, where the ladies of the top contractor school are going to get together to discuss what it's like to be a woman in construction, leadership, and navigating the balance between it all. Your host for the TCS WMN Podcast will be Carla Goldammer, who has been in construction for almost 30 years with D&J Site Construction. She will be accompanied by a rotation of co-hosts that include Elizabeth Ryman of RK Ryman Construction, Sandra Albert of Bay Country Contractors, Lillian Calloway of K&L Industries, and Kelsey Wright of Pro Line Parking Lot Maintenance. Let's get started.
Welcome back to the TCS Podcast, where we shine a light on bold, brilliant women shaping the construction industry and beyond. Today's guest, Lauren Furtado. We'd like to welcome her back. This is part 2 of our original podcast series with her. She's a mom, she's a boss, and she's talked about her grief journey. And today we're going to dive into her career, what that looks like, how she encourages and shines women out there in the industry, and how to take control of your business. So welcome back, Lauren.
Thank you.
So we didn't talk about this in our first segment. So I feel like we should kind of dive into a short synopsis of what is a fractional CFO. What does that mean?
Yeah. So fractional really just implies part-time, right? A lot of people hear like fractional HR or fractional legal in like the small business world, but the same concept applies to your chief financial officer. But when you think about a CFO, people sometimes get caught up of like, well, are they part of the accounting team? Like, what are they in charge of? You have to think of them as part of your leadership team. If I think about big corporations, right? Like your C-suite of executives, you've got the CEO, you've got a COO, you've got the CFO, right? So it's really part of the executive leadership team. So it's bringing in expertise to help you strategize in your business. That really helps to connect the numbers to kind of the action items in terms of getting you to your goals.
Awesome. Well, so part of being a fractional CFO, I mean, that's an amazing title, but you're also full-time mom, and we talked about that in the last podcast. So, how did you go from working in corporate America, balancing the loss of your husband with your children, to then owning your own business and being a boss like you are today?
Yeah. So as you can imagine, the load in the early grief and like even getting back to work was pretty hefty in terms of picking up additional responsibilities at home, and the time I needed dedicated to that and the energy. Let's not forget that piece. And really, when I was building my business at first, I just layered that on. It was like, okay, so I'm working full time, grieving, taking care of children, solo parenting. And then at 10 o'clock at night, I'm logging in trying to build a business. Like, how sustainable is that going to be?
Yeah.
And not my most quality work, right? So there was a period of about 9 months where I was doing that. I also had made a commitment to the firm. I had expressed interest. I was kind of ready to move on career-wise. And I said, but I promise I won't leave during our busy time. And I held true to that. After being there for so long, I wasn't going to leave people hanging. So once I got through the busy time and the dust kind of settled, I truly just had to take a good hard look in the mirror and say, like, do you really think this is going to get off the ground if you don't put some pressure on it? And my mentor that I had posted actually just something on LinkedIn and wrote, "Hungry dogs run fast." And I was crying. I'll never forget it. It was a Friday. I'm crying. And I messaged him. I was like, I'm putting in my notice because I will never be able to dedicate the hours I need to unless I actually leave my job. Because even this block of time from 8 to 3 every day, I need to be working on my business. So I made sure, and listen, I'm an accountant. I'm pretty type A. I was always, responsible for the finances in my house. I knew I had cash runway in order to last me a certain amount of time. And if I couldn't get it together by then I'd have to get a job. But it really was a leap of faith because this was the job I actually had first out of college. Like, I had been there for 20 years. Like, there was a level of comfort there that I had to let go of. And I think also the resilience of being through personal grief, when you have been through what you can imagine is hell, From a personal perspective, to me, I was like, oh, what's the worst case? I lose some money and I have to go get a job. I can handle that. Like, that's not the worst case in terms of what can happen in life. That's for sure. So I think my tolerance for risk went up after, being through the traumatic experience of losing my husband. And then I hit the ground running. It was just like, okay, I put my notice in, let's go. Like, I've got to feed these kids. There's nobody else to do it. So I've got to make sure it works.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think about that of it's already scary enough to be an entrepreneur. Then let's take the disaster of where things were going in your life, right? Like you've become a single parent, you have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and you're like, yeah, hi, I'm going to go do this entrepreneurship. Like
people thought I was crazy.
Yeah, totally
Like,
crazy.
is she losing her mind in her grief journey? Is she okay? Yes, I'll be perfectly fine. Praise
I'm
Jesus.
okay. Just yes. Hi, it's me. I'm the problem. I'm okay. Yeah. But I think about that, how brave you had to be, right? Like, and I want our audience to understand, like, to do that journey is already scary enough. But usually when you do that journey, you have a support system, you have a significant other, you have a spouse. And like the fact that you had just lost your spouse and to like move forward and that like the resilience that you showed and the bravery and like your faith in God and how you had to just put everything on the line to be able to go on the journey. I mean, because entrepreneurship is lonely, right? Like it's super lonely. And then it's even lonelier when you're going through grief. So I can't even imagine, what you were going through or how you like leaving a corporate job. I mean, I'm not going to lie, like that's the comfort of America, right? Like you have your 9 to 5, you have your guaranteed salary, you're not worried about cash flow because guess what? You're getting paid. It doesn't matter what's happening in cash flow because you have a guaranteed paycheck. But to enter up into the world of entrepreneurship, like that is so brave and so bold of you. I want to talk about, go ahead.
I was going to say the payoff of that though, right? The impact piece was driving so much of it. I was just craving that so much of how can I bring the expertise to people who have skin in the game, like multi-generational businesses, guys who have worked up through the trades and built businesses who really need help. And it was like, I have to be able to make this work because I know I can help.
Yeah. So you brought up the key word there, guys. So, I mean, you come from an industry where it's very male dominated. I work in an industry where it's very male dominated. Tell me about that, right? You are this boss woman who's coming in and potentially telling, construction business owners, what they're doing wrong. Like, how is that received by coming from a woman?
Yeah. It's interesting. I think because of my listen, I'm from the Northeast. I live in New Jersey. I also worked in finance for 20 years that I think I have a level of directness that seems to be more masculine energy than feminine. Now, listen, was I just choked up in tears on the last recording of the podcast? Yes. But I think I drive professionally pretty assertively, and I think it's usually well received. And that's the way I talk about my business too, of like, I'm not for everybody, that if you can't handle a little bit of tough news, then we're not going to be a good fit together. And to be honest, most people who are looking for a fractional CFO want growth. They want change. So they're usually pretty receptive. It doesn't mean every single piece of advice is taken lightly. But I think it's really when you can demonstrate the impacts these things can have on their bank account, they're going to be driven to do it. And I think with men in the blue collar industry, even the women that are in the industry. I had 2 client calls today that were women owners. They're action takers. That's what I like. So when you tell them to go do the things, they're going to figure out a way to go do the things. There's not a lot of dragging their feet. And I'm not saying it's every woman owner in other industries, but for me, like, I don't have a big tolerance for like being in our fields and talking about the same exact thing every single month. Like, we want to improve margins. We want to increase cash flow. Like, you got to go do the thing so we can move on to the next thing. So for me, the people I think I worked best with are the type of owner that typically would be of a construction company.
I mean, I've always said this, right? It is for the construction industry. It is a male dominated industry. But if you take any successful construction company and follow it back to their home base, who's running their home base? It's women, right? We're running their HR, we're running their payroll, we're running their books, So even though we talk about it being a male dominated industry, I do think when it comes to accounting, most construction companies have some type of female led, accounting or, CFO or whatever it is for their business. I mean, women are there. We are, but we're not heard from. We're not seen. We're, silent. So I feel like when talking to blue collar, business owners, mostly men, they have been influenced at some point, whether it's from their spouse or from their account that is usually female. Have you ever experienced any kind of pushback being a female?
No, I don't think so. If anything, I think because there's an element to two things. One is the trust level, right? So, who are they comfortable from an ego perspective, like unveiling that financial nakedness to? Like, is it a female where it feels like a trusted relationship, or is it another guy where maybe they feel a little embarrassed, right? So, I think there's an element of like, maybe I feel more of a trusted source to them in terms of telling me about the issues financially and showing me the numbers. So I think one, and then two, I think we also celebrate the wins, right? So there is an element to of being able to be excited about this stuff, being able to communicate it in a way that like it's not just cut and dry and like I'm not dogging like every man in accounting, but like usually not the most personality. But I think being able to bring that feminine energy in terms of one, those celebrations I talked about, but also empathy, right? Like, oh, that's got to be really hard, right? Like, I'm sure payroll's been stressing you out because I can see in the numbers. So just being able to bring an element of emotion to it that I think brings a good balance. That I think is also like why they trust people with HR stuff, right? With finance stuff, that when you bring women in who bring an emotional element to it, it feels more comfortable to them. And we bring the women, I'll say, kind of behind the scenes into the conversation, even if it's not directly. One is there's some level of oversight. I typically do answer questions and things of the accounting team if they have it. And then number two, when we do onboarding, I spend a lot of time digging into their goals. And I encourage like go home and talk to your wife about your personal financial goals before we talk about your business goals, right? Like, or is she part of the decision making? Bring her to the meeting, right? So I've had that happen as well, where she's part of the ownership. So it's having someone there that bringing both voices to it. So I guess I'd say that the women come in the picture more often than not.
Yeah. I'll tell you that the emotional side of it. So, I work for Daniel Good and
Mhm.
I will tell you, he's learned a lot these last 2 years of what it's like to work with a female VP because there are times when I just need to cry it out, right? Like, I don't want to cry in front of you, but I am overwhelmed with emotion and I'm actually mad that I'm crying in front of you. I need that reset, right? Like, I'm going to be fine. Just give me 5 or 10 minutes and I'll get right back up on the bike. But as a woman, we are run by emotion, right? Like it's just naturally built into us. And, sometimes I need a little sunshine, sometimes I need a little water, a little tender care, and sometimes I just need to be left alone, right? And as a woman, I think you do bring that empathetic side. And I think it's important, inside of our industry because the guys, they like to feel warm and gooey sometimes, right? And they're only going to get that from us women. So,
Yeah, and I think it's about being authentic to yourself, not pretending to be something you're not just because you're at work and like this compartmentalization of like your emotions in your home life or anything like that versus professional. Like I just feel like that's very outdated.
yeah. Yeah. So through this journey, what's something that you've learned about your voice and how do you use it?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest shifts for me on this journey was becoming like the CEO, right? So that was a very foreign thing. When I was shifting from being in public accounting for so long, I was so used to being, oh, I work for a big four and I work for these big clients, right? So my identity shift from a professional standpoint, I think just being able to sit in that CEO seat and like be comfortable with that took a little bit of time, but being empowered to do that. And I love every second of it. The creativity that comes with owning the business is something people don't talk about too much, of like, you can do whatever you want, right? That like you can hire who you want. Yes, it's hard. It is really hard. And there are things that like are crazy to deal with. And, but like the freedom that comes with owning your business and taking it whatever path you want, I think it just feels really liberating to me as well.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, by having women like you on the podcast, of like knowing that there are strong female leaders out there, right? And that like you can take charge. You can take charge over your life. You can take charge of your finances. You can take charge of your household. Like, I think that needs to be spoken of, because I feel like so many times as women, we get overwhelmed and we shut down, right? Like, very much in your journey of losing your spouse, you could have just shut down. You could have just said, like, I'm a victim here, and I'm not gonna listen to my dreams. I'm not gonna follow the path that God wanted me to do, because I want to take the easy route. I don't want to take the hard route. And I think so much of us, like, we go back to these places, and it's your comfort zone. It's just so easy to go back to. But like, you have done just the opposite. You've pushed the envelope, you've made yourself uncomfortable, and you've put yourself in rooms that you never even like imagined, sitting in. I can't tell the audience, like, what's the legacy you're building? Like, what's the impact you want to make?
Yeah. Yeah. I get when I'm actually in client service, the thing I get excited about, it's not just the numbers, right? It's connecting the numbers to something tangible. And it really comes down to the people. So, okay, Sandra, great. I can now help you send your son to a private college. Okay. I can help you invest in real estate. I can help you hire more guys on your team. Right. So it's about being able to provide for families and be able to like really impact communities at the end of the day, that like, each client that we touch, there's a number of people that work for them, including the people who own it, right? That like you truly can touch by helping them with the finances. So from an impact perspective, like that's the stuff that excites me. So it relates to legacy. I always like, the first thing I think about is the kids, right? For me, it's truly about being able to steward everything well. And it's not just stewarding finances. I think that's part of it. Great. I would love to leave them a business now, whether either of them want to be owners of a fractional CFO services firm, I'm not sure. But to give them something, even if they want to sell it someday, would be great. But stewarding our experiences, right? Stewarding our grief, stewarding what we've been through, and being able to testify to that, right? Being able to be generous. One of the prayers I say often with my children is, God, give us opportunities to be generous towards others. And it's not just about, handing money in the popcorn bucket as it passes by at church. It's about, our time. It's about our kindness. So truly, like, how many people can we touch with the heart that we have, and how can we be like the hands and feet of Christ?
Mm. When you look back on the woman you were 5 years ago, what do you think she'd be proud of today?
I think she would be, because when I think about before taking the leap out of my job, there was a comfort level. There was a lot of identity caught up in making my way up the firm, up the chain. It's a very like up or out. It's very competitive. I was always a good performer. I was willing to do a ton of work. So just to be able to remove myself from really having identity in what I could earn or what I could do and my productivity, and like releasing all of that my identity truly is not in all of that. And I think to see my identity rooted, I'm going to keep going back to faith in Christ, and like being a daughter of the Lord, like it's just such a 180 change from where I was. A lot of perfectionism, a lot of fear of failure existed at that time, and now it's completely shed.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, your story is amazing. I feel like even too when I look back at myself 5 years ago, I wasn't in construction. I was in collections, running a collection agency. And I feel like in my journey, when you go through these storms and you ask God, like, what is happening right now? Like, I can't see through it. But so often I can look back and say, oh, okay. Yeah, I see what happened. I see why I got this. I ended up getting a federal lawsuit and
Mhm.
against my agency, and with the advice, of my attorneys, they were like, shut it down. But 5 years ago, you'd ask me like, would I still be in collections? The answer would be yes. And would I still own my own agency? And I would be like, absolutely. And I would have never told you that I would change industry, right? Like I would have never told you that I would be leading, pre-construction meetings, or that I'd be running finances for a construction company. I would have never, ever in a million years imagined that this would be my life today. Right. And so like, I feel like sometimes the same thing could be said about you, right? Like you would probably still be in corporate America and you wouldn't
Yeah,
be
absolutely.
impacting and changing lives in the way that you're doing. So, I mean, it's amazing what God's plan is for your life, whether you like it or not. There is purpose and there is plan. And if you can't see it today, you will
You
see
will.
it. When you get through that storm, you'll look back and say, wow, like God really had me, and I felt I was alone, right? I felt like there was no light at the end of the tunnel, but his light is always there to guide you. And I feel like your story is very reflective of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And even when you can't feel it, he's working, right? He's always with you. And it literally says in scripture that he uses everything for good, not just the storms, right? But everything for good.
Lauren, what's one message you'd share with any woman going through deep loss while still trying to lead, build, and rise?
I think it's have grace for yourself and don't overextend. I think it truly comes down to being self aware enough to know what you might need and tending to that without getting into like an unhealthy thing, right? The last thing I'd want to encourage is someone to be drinking every night and, wallowing in their grief in a way that's unhealthy. But I think you have to be aware of like when you've got a trigger and listen, if that means you cancel meetings for the day and need to take a nap, do it. Not feeling like you're a total failure when one little thing goes wrong. Because I will say, for me in early grief, that was one thing that I wasn't expecting. I thought I had everything okay. And then one tiny little thing would go wrong. And in my mind, the lies that were on repeat were just like, you're not good enough. You can't do this on your own. Like, so just understanding, like, just because there's a trigger, just because you're grief, like something's not wrong with you. It doesn't mean you're doing a horrible job at everything, and just truly like take the time that you need to tend to it, because that unaddressed trauma is just going to perpetuate in ways that are really unhealthy, and come out and manifest in ways that you might not expect. And it's not good for anybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Lauren, we have really unpacked a lot. I'm super excited again to have you part of this TCS journey. Tell people, where can they follow you? Where can they find you? Where can they watch your social media?
Yeah. Yeah, anybody in TCS, I'm in the app. I have actually my own dedicated space. The company my firm name, you'll see on like the left-hand bar, unconventional CFO. I've got newsfeed stuff in there. You can always DM me in the One Team app. If you're not and you're listening to this, LinkedIn is usually where I'm most active, Instagram as well. And then worst case, my website, which is unconventionalcfo.com.
All right, guys. Well, I'm super appreciative of you, Lauren. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us, not just your expertise as a CFO, but as your heart, as a mother, as a widow, and as a woman determined to rise. To every woman listening, you're not alone in your grief, your leadership, or your balancing act. Your story matters. Your strength counts, and your voice deserves to be heard in the boardroom, at the kitchen table, and everywhere in between. Make sure to connect with Lauren. Her info is for sure in the TCS app. And if today's conversation moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. We want to grow our base here at TCS Women. So make an impact, share this story. Until next time, keep building boldly. This is TCS Women. Thank you, Lauren.
Welcome to the TCS WMN Podcast. where the ladies of the top contractor school are going to get together to discuss what it's like to be a woman in construction, leadership, and navigating the balance between it all. Your host for the TCS WMN Podcast will be Carla Goldammer, who has been in construction for almost 30 years with D&J Site Construction. She will be accompanied by a rotation of co-hosts that include Elizabeth Reinman of RK Reinman Construction, Sandra Albert of Bay Country Contractors, Lillian Calloway of K&L Industries, and Kelsey Wright of Pro Line Parking Lot Maintenance. Let's get started.